I have a channel. You can just look under my name and you'll find me. But anyway, so hopefully you have a bucket of water, you have your reference, you have a bunch of brushes. It's nice to have one big one just like this and others that have nice soft hair tips. And I have this nice palette where I just squeezed the primary colors, really the basics. I have some blues, I have some different blacks, dark grays, dark browns, the reds and the yellows and the orange. And that's all you need, really. We don't want to use too many colors. Limited palette is what we are after. So I have this nice soft pencil, hopefully, and I'm gonna start drawing this. Hopefully you have your pencils, your erasers ready. And or if you drew it ahead of time, that's even better. But very quickly I will quickly sketch this image and I will talk as we go of what's important. So basically it is a figure, it's kind of a side view, and we need to look at all the proportions. So usually the head, you can just measure it with your pencil and you can see, okay, so how 1 2 3, it's like about 3 times. So put a little basic oval while you're drawing these. So there's just this oval and you can just measure so you're sure you have the right proportions. I think it's going to be slightly bigger, and you can go 1 2 3. So I think it's just going to be this big. And look at directions. So this is where the head is going to be, then we have some stuff happening. Then the human body is very interesting. It's not a straight line, so it's kind of like an S, especially when you look from a side view, because of this vertebrae that we have, this spine. So the neck goes in this direction, and although it's a fantasy character, we still need to use some sort of realism, and that's going to make it even more convincing. So just quickly sketch it. Hopefully we don't have too much time, and we don't spend too much time on sketching it, because I know we have only hour and 15 minutes. So do your best to sketch it. And so pay attention how the body has kind of like the back is not straight line, but it goes in. Then here is the stomach. So I'm just gonna erase. So have a nice, this is called a kneaded eraser. Hopefully you guys can see my lines. Maybe you don't. If you don't see, I will turn this light to interrupt and ask any questions that you'd like. Just unmute yourself and go ahead with your question. But I will quickly sketch this. Hopefully you see all my lines. So here is the head. Yeah, that's probably a little bit better. And when I start painting, I will use very bright colors, so you will see a little bit better. Okay, great. Thanks guys for telling me. So here is the face. And in this case, I'm kind of following what I see here. You can follow it, but you can add your own elements, like as I said, maybe wings or maybe horns or whatever you want, really. Sky's the limit, for especially for this type of work. So I'm just gonna, and you can have different shapes. So there are all kinds of shapes you can use. So do your best. I know we don't have much time. Maybe next time you can have your drawing drawn ahead of time, so we don't have to spend so much time on this, on drawing it, and we spend more time on painting it. So you can have all the features really exaggerated. She can have larger eyes, not quite realistic. So here I'm just adding all these features, and you can have all kinds of things. So instead of maybe the bow and the arrow, you can have like little scales coming out. So anything that you want. It could be just a really nice, interesting character. So something's coming out. So as I said, there is a little bit of an X, and there's the stomach coming kind of forward and then straight. So these are important things to remember. And she's like a warrior type character, apparently. And you can have all kinds of little elements here to decorate her costume, whatever it is she's wearing, like gear. and things get a bit exaggerated in this whole world of fantasy characters. So here I'm gonna make a little kind of these sharp shapes. Feel free to use any different shapes or add all kinds of details, but I'm just adding here maybe some fingers. So for now, and I know she has her hand on top of this bird, which adds a bit of a character, kind of interesting. So why not add this bird right here? And we have this beak, and it could be just a silhouette, but it does add some scary feeling, a little bit of an ominous. Yeah, all these fantasy characters, they could be scary looking, it could be more fun, more subdued. I like the round sun or a moon behind her, so make sure we include that. Let's do that. And if you can't draw the perfect circle, you can take an, what is it called, abacus, that you draw the circle with, or just get a random shape that is circle and just go around. But that's pretty much it. So I start with a kind of a rough drawing like that. You can be very detailed with your drawing if you'd like. And just for the sake of time, I'm being a bit more quick and sketchy with this. So just make her not so skinny. But yeah, you can make them any shape, a fantasy character. They shouldn't be, they don't have to be realistic. The head could be all stretched out. The sky's the limit, really, with what you can come up with in terms of shapes. It could have all kinds of things, and we can add them later. So I'm gonna maybe bring back some of my light here, or maybe that's again still too. Can you guys see okay? Maybe I should not even put any light. That's probably best, right? Because it kind of burns the whole screen. So just a little bit. And let me know. Feel free to comment and say if you see, if you don't see. So how we paint is, see how I'm taking my very big brush. And again, no fear, no fear. We're gonna start with the background first. So I'm just gonna wet all this area around that circle with just clean water. Hopefully you have a bucket of water. I'm just gonna clean our paint, just cover it with water, because we're going to paint a technique called wet on wet. So that means your surface is wet, and you're going to introduce some paint. And it doesn't have to be these colors that you see on your reference. It could be any other color. So I'm going to make it probably a little bit more fun. So I'll take this maybe red and a little bit of blue and create more of a purple background. Let's see. So it's a bit more purple. Yeah, that's probably going to be a little more dramatic. So don't worry about the little drawings in that background. So see, when it's wet, when the paper is wet, you just go around and kind of, hopefully your paper is also good, because, well, paper is very important in watercolor. You have to use watercolor paper. So if you bought that pad, watercolor pad that I recommended, you'll be on the right track. So I'm just adding some darks, a little bit more dark just around this circle. And you can go in any direction with your brush, but don't go too many times over an area, because we want to keep the spontaneity. So I'm just adding just this cool brush strokes around and around this bird. And very quickly we just paint this background really, really nice and quick. And let's just add some more just color right there. It's still wet on wet, and sometimes the water that we covered tends to dry faster, but don't worry about it. So if you have paper towel at hand, you can have some interesting swipes right here, just like that. See, almost like light is shining on having these nice glow elements. It's all in watercolor basically. And we can have some clean water spatters to add some interest to it. Tap tap and see how it creates a nice texture right away. Do you all have watercolor with you? If anybody doesn't, let me know. If somebody's for some reason doesn't have all the right supplies, you can use pretty much anything you have. The principles are very much the same, but we're going to move down here now. And don't worry if you're painting over some of your edges or it goes over into the figure. That's gonna make it even more interesting. And watercolor needs to be painted nice and saturated, meaning don't hesitate to take a lot of paint. Just because watercolor dries really light. So here I'm just gonna grab some more darker tones and see how it's all a little redder at the bottom. And just be very free, very bold with your brush strokes. Sometimes even lift my page and kind of let things drip a little bit. If I have enough water, of course. I don't think this is wet enough, but you can still do some of these swirls so they add some interest to this whole painting. A couple of those spatters, it's really nice. So now that we have that background squared away, how is everybody doing? Everybody's on track? If you have any questions, if you want to show me what you're painting, you can absolutely unmute yourself anytime and just say, hey, here I have a question, Miss Lucy. Lucy for short, you can call me Miss Lucy. Ask me any questions, show me your drawing, painting, and whatever you'd like to show. I'm just using now my paper towel to create this kind of rays going around. That's going to add some interest. So now let's paint our character. And here, oh well, before the character, let's do this nice yellowish moon sky behind. No, not moon sky. Moon or a sun that's right behind, so it could be nice and bright. Let's just, and again, you can use clean water. My water is not quite clean, so I need to clean my brush. Make sure you have some clean water. You can just put some water first and then use some of that yellow that you'd like to put on top. Let me get some brighter yellow because it's getting all kind of dull. And it's easier to start with the background because this way you immediately have determined how your values are going to be. And whoever never heard of the word values in painting in general, these are the lights and your darks. So that's the most important, having light and dark in your painting. So some areas are light, some are dark. And in this case, we're going to have the figure even darker than the background. The background is kind of a medium value, but the figure will be more in the dark. So always remember to see the big picture. Always look at the big picture, and the details come later. They'll last. Don't worry too much about the details. We can always fix them. So now let's see here. I'm just fixing some of my circle doesn't look quite there. So okay, so I'm just going to mix a nice skin tone, and that could be a mix of red. My red is very bright red, some yellow, just grab some yellow, also some brown. If you have some brown, that's going to tone it down a little bit. So that's what creates a skin tone. And
excuse me?
yes, yes.
I'm struggling to keep up. If you don't mind slowing down just a bit, that would be very helpful.
Sure, absolutely, not a problem. Where are you now at right now at this point? Are you guys at the drawing part or are you at the background?
I'm not quite done with the back.
Oh, okay. Yes, not a problem. How about everybody else? Are you all somehow, somewhere near? Yeah, the only reason I'm kind of speeding up is because we have only, now it's 4:19, so we have almost an hour, yeah. So we're doing good, no worries. We have an hour, and even if we just get the basic of it, you can always finish it later. So, so that's why it's good to have larger brushes. And maybe if you'd like, you may want to start with a smaller paper, not so big. Depends how big your paper is. That tends to take some time to fill, really. But brushes are very important. Get some bigger brushes if you can, so that will tend to fill the area faster. All right. So let me know how you guys doing. And I can just add some more value here at that background and make it a bit more dark, because watercolor does tend to dry lighter, and I'm already seeing it drying a little bit light, so I'm just going to add some more brush stroke and a bit of a second layer to kind of darken it a little bit. I know sometimes it is hard to look at the monitor, at the screen, and then also paint, so I completely understand. Okay, and don't be afraid of the medium. Adults are very afraid of watercolor. I notice that young artists are more free and more fearless, really. So that's a good thing. Okay, hopefully everybody's doing okay. Let me know when you're ready to focus on that character. I'm just adding, maybe making things a little bit darker. So while you're working on your backgrounds, I'm just gonna paint this bird really dark. So I will introduce some dark like black and mix it with my main color. So how I got to this color, I basically mixed blue and red, and it looks a bit purple, right? This is the best way to really get to this color. And now if you want to make the bird a little bit darker, you can make a little puddle. That's what I do on my palette. Hopefully you have a nice mixing palette. These are called mixing palettes. So you can just grab a little color from here, a little color from there, and that's how we mix on our palettes. So if things start bleeding out, because watercolor is so watery that things can just bleed and you can lose some of these edges, that's a good thing. That is actually the whole nature of watercolor. So I'm going to quickly paint that bird. So remember, try to be free as you can. You don't have to fill in. This is not a coloring class. We're not filling, the blanks. We're just trying to be as expressive as we can with this. If you've seen a lot of these fantasy illustrations are painterly, although if you look closely, they really paint in a very painterly way, although they do look quite realistic. But we can always add the detail later. So always remember that. That's very, very important. And just focus on the big picture. And that's why we're starting with the background, because that's easy to make us really focused on the big picture. Okay, so I just put this ominous looking bird, almost like a dark silhouette. So for those of you who are done with your background, and I'll suggest grab a bigger brush. Background is not that important, so just pop it in, and you can just now get a dark, more paint and a bigger brush, and just create a nice dark silhouette here of this bird, some sort of a creature. And now if you've noticed, I'm just leaving some areas white. I don't paint everything, I don't just fill it in. Some areas should stay white, and we're going to determine which areas. So these are highlights usually. So here on her helmet there's some highlights, some areas on her face. Here probably on the body a little highlights. We'll see, but for now I'm just pointing this, that is important to know. All right, so first we're going to paint the big shapes, meaning we're going to paint first the skin tone. We're going to paint one basic color, kind of a dark medium for all the other elements, and dark medium value. That's what I meant, dark medium value, meaning kind of on the darker side. And then we're going to mix a really dark tone to bring out the details. We don't paint with white in watercolor. And there's something interesting to know. You can just run a clean water next to an edge and see, and you can soften it. That's called softening an edge. So edges are nice to be different. They don't all have to be really sharp everywhere. So that's the beauty of this medium. So hopefully everybody's doing good. Are we on the right track? Yes, I don't hear any.
Yes.
Yes, good, awesome. I'm sure you guys doing great. So let's mix a nice skin tone. So as I said, so just grab some red, a little bit of yellow, and a little dash of brown. Just mix a nice skin tone. If it's getting too yellow, just pop in some red again. If it's getting too orange, put some brown. It just makes a nice little puddle of a skin tone. And again, it depends on the complexion. If it's a lighter complexion, just use a little bit more water. And here we just go all over that face, and leave, maybe the cheekbone is gonna have a highlight, so just go all over everywhere else with that same skin tone. We are not gonna add any shadow yet. I know there is shadow, but I'm just going. So maybe to save time next time, if you guys can have it drawn first before the class, that's probably going to be helpful. So just leave a little white here on the front of the nose. That's going to be a nice highlight. And now we are just painting the eyelashes. Paint over the eye too. Just, you can leave some highlight there. And right under that helmet there will be a shadow. So as everything is still wet, let's pop in some purple. So I'm mixing again the red and the blue, a little bit of a darker tone, and while everything is still wet, you can just put a little shadow right here because it's right under that helmet. So, or hat, whichever you decide, but there will always be a shadow right there, and you can bring it down a bit. Okay, so we're not putting any details at this point. We're not painting any eyes, any other details. We're just going to introduce that skin tone. So we have that little puddle of skin tone. So I'm mixing red, a little yellow, and with some water, I'm just putting it here on her arm. Sometimes color tend to look, the skin tone shouldn't look too yellow, so I always adjust it. Just add some red, and I also leave a little white on top of that shoulder. Maybe there is a highlight there, and continue down. And you can, as I said, you can make up your own character. Just use this as a template. It doesn't have to be all exactly like what we are seeing here. You can, you know, decide that the skin is blue. It doesn't have to be at all what you see over there. That's why it's fantasy, because you completely have the freedom to improvise and come up with. So what I'm doing right now is basically I'm cleaning my brush, I'm dabbing it on my paper towel, and I'm lifting. See, on the very front of this arm, I'm just lifting some highlights, and that gives some more three-dimensional. And here I'm just lifting that on the face. That gives some more three-dimensional shape where there's the light. It's more in the light, that area here. This eye is going to be in the dark, so I'm just adding some more dark. All right, and maybe her back here has also this skin tone in the shadow. And you can add some more detail, just get some dark, so red with a little darker black, and just pop in here where you see, well, everything is still wet, so this way your watercolor is gonna blend really nicely. So I'm gonna add some dark on that side. So that is good for the skin tone. And now I'm gonna just make some really dark tone for the rest. And again, you can just paint basic shapes. Don't worry about the details, because we will add the details later. So that could be a mix of blue and black, but have some water, and don't make it too dark, because we won't have too much to work with when we start adding the details. So again, blue, black, so more on the blue side, really dark, and just start adding these shapes. And you can have a funky helmet, anything you like, really. You can paint it with a dry brush. What is a dry brush? Like, if everything is dry, your paper is dry, and your brush doesn't have too much water on it, but it has the pigment, it just leaves this really nice dry brush technique with a texture on it. So let me just show you what I mean. And be very free, be very bold. Don't be afraid if it doesn't look at all like the reference. It will be okay. I know watercolor can seem scary, but it's not. So I'm just painting this helmet, making sure I'm leaving some white for highlights, because imagine it's metal, so there's definitely highlights. And just create some basic shapes all around. And you can lift while it's still wet again with your brush. Clean your brush, dry it on your paper towel, and you just lift. Here I'm going to lift some of these elements and create some highlight. So little by little, we're just going down here, and you can have anything you want. You can have antennas coming out at this point. You can have any shape you'd like and create your own character. It could be just made out of lines, of dots, polka dots. Really, sky's the limit, as I said. So I'm just moving this helmet forward. And if you use too much water, your paint is not going to be as dark. It will be really coming out more gray. So try not to use too much water at this point, and really have some nice dark pigment. So I'm just adding a bunch of shapes here. You can go down and whatever she's wearing. You can just add all kinds of things. Interesting. And you can make up your own, as I said. So here it's going to be even darker on the back because there's not much light going on. But again, it shouldn't be too dark, like dark, but leave some areas because we're gonna be painting even darker on top of this. So we're just painting the main shapes right now. And I decided I'm not gonna do the arrows. I'm gonna make my own, and I'm just creating some sort of a, I don't know, shape coming out of her back. And you can do whichever you really prefer. So I'm just adding all these darks, and see it all as a big picture. How we see shapes as a big picture, just look at your reference, squint your eyes, both your eyes, just so it's all fuzzy, and that's how you see the big picture, all these big shapes. I'm just improvising with some things like this maybe, and just cover this whole area with your pen, basically painting this character. And of course we probably won't have enough time to finish it because it is a complex character, but you can always finish it at home, I mean after the class. I'm gonna have, yeah, there's 2 feathers sticking out, that's kind of interesting. And there's this thing on her arm, I think it's like a metal, whatever shape it is, and just add all these dark things for her clothing or gear or whatever she's doing. Armor, that's the armor. Okay, so I'll just keep adding it and just leave a little dots of white here and there of the paper. That's gonna make it more interesting. Okay, just adding some more dark here, and again you can lift while everything is still wet. Let's lift here on top of her chest area. Some of these edges don't have to be so sharp. You can lift maybe because it's metal, so it has some interesting highlights. See how it's all suddenly all starts to look more like metal if you lift these highlights. And maybe some of these elements. We're creating an interesting illustration. Okay, and then we continue with her skirt. Same color goes down, and I think there is some more armor here as gloves or protecting her hands. And I guess she's holding the bow. You don't have to paint that bow if you don't want to. Just continue painting these dark shapes of her armor right now. Little by little our figure is coming together, so don't worry if you're just moving a little bit slower than me. Obviously I've done this a lot, and you, even if it takes you a little bit longer, I'm recording this and you can always go back and go on YouTube where I'm under my name. You can just look and you can always rewind and see what was happening and finish your painting a little bit later. I'll try to post it around sometime tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Hopefully I process it quicker. But here you can be really fast and expressive with the bottom part of this character's skirt. And again, don't be too timid. Use lots of paint, lots of water. Just get as much paint as you can on your brush, so it's not too light. So your painting should be the value should be looking dark. Okay, and we will add all the all the details, the little details of this part as soon as this paint dries, which is probably drying already on the very top of her, where we started with the helmet. See how some of the paint flows and some of the edges disappear, and you can always have some edges disappear. Actually, I like that part. Maybe here some of the edges on the skirt can, and so I run clean water next to that edge, and you're just gonna connect to the background and blend, which is okay, really good. It's a good thing. So here's some edges too. I'm just lifting a little bit, some area where there may be lit by the light. That's her hand. So see, the whole purpose of watercolor is basically putting color and you're lifting it. That's how you can lighten it up. And you can also blend it by adding some more water and also softening some of the edges. It's gonna make it really nice. And I see her hand is on that other side, on top of that bird. I think it's great. Looks really interesting. So I'm gonna add that part too. Just on top. So once you get a hang of the medium, just using watercolor, you can really create many characters your own, and you don't have to copy others. So you can just come up with your own characters with all kinds of interesting features. Okay, so here's that bird. They're kind of buddies, obviously friends. So there's a little background here that's missing, so I'm just gonna add that over here. And while this is drying, I'm gonna focus a bit more on this helmet area, which is already dry, and her face, and add some features, and I'll show you. But first thing first, there is this sort of a beak, so I'm gonna introduce a different color, maybe an orange, just like it is over there, a little bit warmer, and I'll just paint that part orange. To make it a bit more different. There we go. And again, you can lift to kind of lighten some areas. Not too much water, so I always tap it in my paper towel, all this water, and that's when I lift to create a nice highlight right there. So here you can take a smaller brush to paint some of the face features. Let me see how we're doing every time. Yes, so we have about 30 minutes, so we're doing good. And just makes a nice, like a little darker tone. So I'm taking some brown, red, some of the blacks. Just makes a darker tone. And now we're going to paint her face. And she has some interesting, I don't know, swirls, markings. You can always do that. That's gonna add to everything. Hopefully everything is nice and dry already in your painting. And we will just add her eye. Looks really almost like a Egyptian character. Ancient Egypt, I think that's how they drew their eyes. And you can improvise and do all kinds of shapes on these markings. Obviously, take a smaller brush and a point, and be careful when you get to that point, because that's already, now we're getting into the details. So the details, we need to be a little bit more careful with it. See, I just added some more lines there. I kind of improvised a little bit. And just keep going at your own pace. You're not behind. If you think you are, you're not. You're just going to be finishing it a little bit later, but you are seeing where we are going, so you're just following basically all the steps. And I'm just adding now shadow, like under this helmet there's definitely shadow, so it's falling. I'm using a bit of a brown and red to create this darker value. Just adding it, and now adding this nostril. Now be very careful, so take a smaller brush with point, and be careful now with these features. We don't want to be too sloppy in that area, and maybe a different value for those, for the lips. Always the upper lip is usually darker because it kind of goes in. There is it's a plane that kind of, it goes in, and there's the light is not quite as strong as on the lower lip. That's just a general rule. Yeah, the other eye on the other side. Please feel free to ask questions, or if you feel lost, you can always ask questions. But I'm sure you're doing a great job, and you can always show me what you have. I'm just softening a little bit, like putting a bit of a shadow right under her nose. You know, there's always a shadow under the nose, so slightly adding some more water there, and a little darker tone right here. All right, so hopefully things are going smoothly with everyone. I'm continuing here with the face a little bit. Here, right there, there is a chin, and just a little dab of color. Now this drawing, this painting, this is kind of the initial painting. You can become get very realistic with it, but these are the first initial strokes of paint that we do. And as you can see, we always started with a big shape, and then we go with all our details. So now the details are easy because we already have everything squared away, right? So it's not going to be hard at all. Her eye is very interesting. It's kind of dark. It has this dark upper eyelid, and almost ominous looking, so I want to make it a bit darker. Quite a bit, and just really darken this whole area there, which is under this eyebrow. So I'll just introduce some darker tone, so that adds a bit more character to our person. So now you can take a smaller brush, and we're just gonna add a lot of details, smaller details like dark lines. There's all these feathers sticking out from her helmet. You can put dots and spikes, and here the sky's the limit, really. So just be very bold and brave with your brush stroke. So here I'm just gonna go woohoo, like try to be bold and brave with one stroke. Just tap it and create whatever line you want. And here I'm just gonna go like that, and it just follows all these other lines. So just use black, like directly, just get a lot of black, and here you can create all kinds of details on top of this dark shapes that you already created for her clothing, and it's gonna make it very, very interesting. Here's some spikes and lines, maybe a bit of a line, maybe some detail. There are edges, little lines. Don't be afraid to use lots of lines. Here under that helmet there is a shadow, so that's going to be where the line is going to be. Here. This way we are really outlining some of the details. Oh, and I see this interesting eye there on that, so there's a lot of details you can do on that helmet. So just a very small brush, thin, and now it's the fun part, because we did all the big things, and now we're just adding some tiny details. It doesn't have to be as scary as this, but kind of those fantasy characters, a lot of them are a little bit more, a little darker looking and more ominous, but you can be more friendly. They don't have to be scary. So just add a bunch of lines and emphasize those. So it's worth exploring and practicing if you really want to be good at this, to practice drawing figures, human figures. And again, you can exaggerate eventually for your fantasy character, but if you know really how to paint realistic, you're gonna become very good at exaggerating and taking that all to the next level. So I'm just adding a bit more lines, obviously part of her headgear here. So you can do little dots, yeah, sky's the limit really to all the detail you can add. Obviously it's a metal, so I have to be always conscious of the time. So it's 4:53, so we have 10, 15, almost 25 minutes. We're doing good, guys. I hope you're on the same kind of going, keeping the pace. If you're not, don't worry, we have a video. And you can always improvise and finish it at home, but this is the direction. This is kind of the direction where we're going. What's important with this type of paint, like watercolor, is not to go too many times over the same area, because this is going to first destroy your paper, second it's going to make the painting looking not so fresh. So we really want to make it look very, very fresh. So I'm just adding some improvising with all these elements over here. So maybe some more feathers sticking out. Obviously she's the crow bird lady. Okay, and more stuff sticking out here. Just adding darker lines on top of this really dark tone adds even more depth and makes it richer, more rich. So here's some more spikes. You can add little spikes on her arm thing and a bunch of lines. Like a bracelet. Definitely this little lines, some more lines, defining shapes. And going down here, that arm. And just looking, you can study it really closely. You don't have to speed up so much, just like I do. Just want to kind of get it to a point where it's somewhat complete so you can have an idea of the direction we'll be going. And it's okay for the first time if you're in this class to feel a bit stressed because you've never done it before, but keep working on it and you'll know what to expect the next class. And if you can draw it maybe ahead of time, if you can draw your reference ahead of time, maybe you'll save some more time and kind of move a little bit faster. So there's no stress. We're all just having fun and really exploring this cool medium. I'm just adding some more dark here because I feel like it really needs to be very dark. And watercolor, of course, dries so light. It just needs a bit of a punch from time to time here to make it more sharper and with a higher contrast. Alright, so it just keep going. I need to look closely what she's holding. Yeah, oh yeah, she has some very interesting shapes over here which I didn't even notice, but yeah, you can always add these like a little spiky elements on those. And obviously there's a chain. And you don't have to paint every single detail. You can just have a suggestion at this point. Just have a little suggestion here and there. Obviously these are her feathers, the feathers sticking out everywhere. So next time I will pick a different character, and again you can modify it. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. It helps to kind of use one as a reference, but if you can add some of your own interpretation to it, it's gonna be even better. So I'm sure you're doing great. Feel free to show me what you have, ask me any questions or share. And if you want, actually, yeah, keep mixing my blacks. I'm just basically using pure black, and I'm going to paint the negative shape. What's the negative shape? Anything around a shape is the negative shape. So here, just painting the negative shape around this whole bunch of, I think, feathers that are down on her skirt. And if your black is not too dark, just mix it with dark blue and it will look darker. So here I'm creating this very dark shade right around. And that's where her fingers are gonna be. Hands are difficult to paint sometimes, so if you're not into it, if you don't want to go into that, you just can create it more of a like a silhouette rather. So, but it's always important to look in some of the books, drawing books, and see how the body is constructed. It does help. So here we go. Maybe there's some more of these dots. I'm just adding some dark on this side because I really want it to be dark on that side. Obviously the light is coming probably from in front of her more. You don't have to be perfect with your brush strokes. You can be more painterly, that's okay. Maybe add some detail to this bird that she's with. So I'm just mixing red and a little bit of and blue. So instead of black, because I don't want it to be as dark. I don't want it to be as dark as my figure. Kind of separate them a little bit. So it's this dark purplish color. All right, and I'm just adding some more dimension to this. To this bird. Okay, let's grab some more dark tones. Yeah, this time maybe I do need some black here, possibly around the eye, to really emphasize that eye that we're seeing, and maybe right under her hand where she's holding it. And then that beak has some details on it. So if I look closely, yeah, there's some things happening. So just adding a second layer to that bird will help to make it more solid, not too flimsy looking. So here I'm just adding some more darker tones to anchor it a little bit. So this is how, if we make a mistake, let's say I realize that the head of the bird should actually go in, has more neck. I basically put some water, and you can always wipe your paint a little bit, paint with your paper towel. So that will help clean up the area a little bit. And I'll go back and redefine this edge right here. Okay, so I just pick a different color. As you notice, it's more of a purple for the bird, so it's slightly different. So we're keeping this interesting look everywhere. And again, lift for some lighter areas. It's okay to lose some of the edges. Some of the edges can disappear. Now I'm looking at the skin tone here. It does require some more shadow. It looks a bit flat, so while everything is already dry, you can just go back to the skin tone, get some red, yellow, a little bit of brown, even a little bit of that purple that we mixed for the bird. That could be a nice color here for the shadow of the arm. I'm just adding a little bit of shadow, so just 1-2 strokes, not too many. I'm just going down here. There is some muscle, there is a structure to the body, so there is a muscle. And now how to soften it, you get clean water and just run it right next to that edge, and it's going to blend it really nicely, and this way you have more three-dimensional feel. So obviously there's a bunch of muscles here, we can emphasize those. So this is how we paint our characters in watercolor. It's a great medium. You can always paint it, with different medium, like, even markers. You can use oil, I think acrylic, but in watercolor there is a certain feel to it that is kind of nice and fluid, very mysterious, adds to this mysterious look. Okay, I just added some more dark over there because it's in the shadow, this whole area. So hopefully everybody's doing okay. Feel free to show me your work. Just turn on your camera, show me what you have. Even if it's not even near what we have here, I will definitely, I'm sure it's great. You're doing your best. Just do your best, and every single next one will be even better. So don't feel at all discouraged. Take your time. If you want to redo it and watch the video and redo it, yeah, that's okay too, if you're really into learning these. So I've just mixed a bit of a yellow and red, and I have this kind of opaque, what is opaque, kind of thicker tone. I just need to maybe work a little bit on that arm, if you guys can see, and just pop some of these, maybe some of her hand here, just show a bit, but that's going a little overboard, too much. And now all I can do is just keep adding detail. If you want to really get very, very involved with the detail, you can just go very tiny with a small brush and add all kinds of cool things. I have this nice brush, it's called a rigger brush. So it has a very long hair, and it's very thin. So that one is perfect for these crazy lines, like if you want to add some interesting lines. So if I get some black, I can maybe add some cool lines, as if there is the feathers sticking out of that. Even though it's not on our reference, I'm just adding some more lines, just for interest. Maybe adding some lines on her skirt to make it a little bit more interesting with some more detail. Hopefully you guys having fun with this. We usually don't paint with white in watercolor, but if you want to go back and kind of emphasize some highlights, if you have tubes, I have this tube and it's white, titanium white. I just open it and take a small brush. I just dig right in it because it's going to be really opaque. If you have the other type of watercolors that are just little circles, little cakes, you can do that too, but you have to use lots of white. And usually you can just pop in some highlights if you lost some of the highlights, maybe some of the white. You can even add some detail, but tiny, and don't mix the white with any color. So we don't mix white with anything in watercolor because that's gonna turn it into a different medium. So if you want to emphasize some of these edges here, maybe there is some little more detail. And it's okay to mix medium. If you want, you can even go with a pencil, color pencils on top, and add some more details. But obviously you have to wait for this to dry. So right now it's not quite dry, so I'll just wait probably till the next day and maybe add a bunch of details. But see how I'm just adding little highlights for all these edges of her armor. And I know there are little highlights everywhere, so because it's metal, so the metal, especially here, there is obviously a lighter edge, so just a little line is going to help, especially if you lost it in the beginning. But be gentle, very, very gentle with these finishing touches at the very end. So again, highlight on that metal. Maybe some on the skirt again. And obviously there is some edge over here. This is so much fun to paint. I'm sure you guys, you can, as I said, you can come up with your own characters, and you don't have to be a good figure drawer. You can just create a crazy creature. So maybe that's what our next reference should be, something that doesn't require too much figure drawing or, you know, knowledge of the figure. We can do some crazy dragon, and that way you can just do really all kinds of things with it. So feel free to show me what you have or ask any questions. Yeah, it is. It's, oops, see, I put my hand and I have this smudge on it, so always just clean waters. Obviously it's gonna clean it. No sweat, no worry. Watercolor should not be a scary medium. And sometimes even for the fun of it, I can spatter. You can just get some puddle of little white. So we have 5 minutes. So guys, feel free to ask me any questions, and you can just spatter a little bit just to create some more mysterious kind of a mist. It does add more interest. Anyone brave enough to show their work? You can always email it to, I guess, to the town, and they will send it to me. I can take a look. But no sweat, no worry. You can always show it next time. So you can finish it at home and show it to me next time when you join the class and say, hey, Miss Lucy, look what I came up with. And I'm sure it's gonna be awesome. So hopefully you guys having a lot of fun with this.
Lucy, can you tell us what your YouTube channel is?
Good question. They can just type up my name, Lyudmila Tomova, and they will see it. And it's gonna pop. Just Lyudmila Tomova. I think I changed my name to something else, but if you just type my name, it will pop. Whatever it is, it will show up. I keep sending people to my YouTube. I don't even know my YouTube channel name. It's fine. You'll find me. Just type up Lyudmila Tomova, Lyudmila Tomova, and you guys gonna see. I have a lot of tutorials there for all kinds of things, but this is fun because it's fantasy and it's different. So yeah, next time I will send the reference early, a few days earlier, and you can have it all sketched out slightly earlier, ahead of time, and definitely add your own interpretation to it. You can just add all kinds of features. So
I put your name in the chat.
good. That's great. And we have this recorded. They can watch it again, mimic it, pause it, stop it at any time.
Where will we be able to watch this again?
On YouTube, I will post it. I'll try to post it tomorrow. The earliest would be tomorrow, and I will let Miss Jewel or Miss Kim know, and they will send you the link.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, anyone wants to show what they have, or you want to work on it and show me next time? Yes, feel free to finish it. And what's funny about watercolor is even sometimes that if we don't like it quite, just let it rest a little bit and come back to it, and it will look really much better. And then work a bit some more, but try to keep it spontaneous, not overworked, obviously. So that's why sometimes I'm speeding up all this whole painting, because I want to keep it spontaneous. That's the whole thing. So we don't want it to be too meticulous. That's the nature of the style and the medium. Really, it's very fluid. So we want to work kind of fast. But you're not too fast with it. That's okay, because it's a different pace. It's a skill that we're going to learn little by little, and you'll see by session 3 you will have fantastic work. See, so I'm just dripping some of this paint, kind of making it drip.